So before we get started, I just want to let everyone know to make sure that your sound is properly connected. At the bottom of the screen, you can follow the instructions to connect your sound. You'll see a phone or computer icon next to your name. To make sure we don't have any distracting noises, we've automatically muted you all. So if you have any questions, please type in the chat box. There's also a Q&A box where you can ask any questions. My colleague Aaliyah will be monitoring both, so please feel free to use them. In the meantime, while we wait, please type your name, organization, where you're coming from in the chat box, introduce each other, introduce yourselves to each other, and we'll be sharing the presentation slides at the end of this webinar, along with a recording, which will be on YouTube. So I got people from Calgary, Nova Scotia, Saskatchewan, Ontario, New Brunswick. Good to see a nice array from all over. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us. Guelph, Richmond Hill. Amazing. We'll take another minute and then we'll dive into it. Oakville. Territories, Guelph, yeah. All right. Okay, we'll dive into it then. I just want to start first, before we do a deep dive into the IRP process, we would like to start this webinar by acknowledging that many of us are in traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory. We want to recognize the role that the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit have played and continue to play as guardians of the land and waters upon which we gather today. It is with great respect of this role that we start our work, knowing that our relations need to be improved and consider the continued impacts of colonization, systemic racism, and ongoing violence towards Indigenous women. Here's the IRP team. I'd like to introduce you to the whole team. So here's Sigal Douala, who is the Senior Director. She's not on the call today, but she will be in the Q&A session next week for more in-depth Q&A period. I'm Fedra. I'm the host today. I'm one of the managers of the IRP program. Leah Loney, my colleague, is also on the call. She is monitoring the chat box and the Q&A. Our emails will be available at the end of the presentation and also on the website. So to provide some background about who we are, the Canadian Women's Foundation was set up in 1991 to fill a gap for women's philanthropy. Despite what might have been legal or what appeared to be in law reforms that guaranteed women equity and equality, in reality, it wasn't happening. So the foundation was established to gather important resources that would be made available to our organizations working in 4 key areas, namely preventing gender-based violence, supporting women's economic development, promoting exclusive leadership, and championing girls' empowerment. Through funding, research, advocacy, and knowledge sharing, we work to achieve systemic change. We support women, girls, and gender diverse people to move out of violence, out of poverty, and into confidence and leadership. For more than 30 years, we've delivered more than 150 million in funds to over 2,500 life-transforming programs throughout Canada. More and more, our priority focus has been to support communities and organizations which perhaps have the least access to this kind of funding. As for the Investment Readiness Program, from 2019 to 2021, the Government of Canada piloted the IRP as a core initiative under the broader social innovation and social finance strategy. So the program distributed 50 million to social purpose organizations, and the program was renewed in 2022. The Canadian Women's Foundation is just one of 5 readiness support partners delivering that IRP funding to social purpose organizations. So what is the Investment Readiness Program? How does it all relate to the Social Finance Fund? So back in 2017, ESDC appointed a social innovation, social finance strategy steering group, and they produced 12 recommendations. So one of those recommendations was to help social purpose organizations, or SPOs as we like to call them, build their capacity to participate in Canada's growing social finance market and prepare them to eventually take on investments. As mentioned, there are 5 partners distributing those funds to help SPOs, including Canadian Women's Foundation. There's the Community Foundations of Canada, Foundation for Black Communities, National Association of Friendship Centers, and Chantier, which is Quebec only. The Social Finance Fund is a $755 million fund delivered over 10 years and expected to roll out in 2023. Investments will be made through wholesalers, which are pan-Canadian investors, but also need to leverage the government's investments by a 2-to-1. The Social Finance Fund is not a grant fund, and social purpose organizations will not apply directly to the Social Finance Fund. It is the wholesalers and finance intermediaries that will distribute the loans, equity, etc. But everyone will be at different stages of the investment readiness scale. Some may need more supports to become ready to access capital, but SPOs will be able to access these social finance options for at least the next 10 years. So it will be made available even if you're not ready right now. You might be ready 5 years down the line, 70 years down the line. The fund will still exist. And so here's a little visual of how it works. So the ESDC federal department will seek to invest alongside private investors. Ultimately, more money will reach social purpose organizations and others in the social economy. So they'll be investing through social finance investors, and ESDC is partnering with the private investors along with each other and then investing into the social investors across Canada. So social finance is a tool to help circulate social economies. In order to have a circular economy, cultural, social, and environment impact is prioritized, as well as financial returns. So social finance options help catalyze and sustain circular economies, essentially the purpose of this. So now we'll paint a little bit more picture of what social finance could look like on the ground. There are multiple ways to use it. Some of them have used it to launch a social enterprise. Some of them have used it to scale a social enterprise. Others have used it to purchase an asset. So, for example, there's not necessarily one way to do it. There are many different ways, and I'll just share you some examples. So, for example, FoodShare they launched a social enterprise. It's a wonderful organization based in Toronto that focuses on food justice and food insecurity in the GTA area, from those most affected by poverty and food insecurity in different communities. Many years ago, they decided to increase their revenue generation by purchasing a used bus from the TTC through a loan and other means in order to provide a locally grown food at affordable rates to communities through a mobile truck market. By launching the social enterprise, they were able to charge customers at a reduced rate, which include the transportation of cost of operating the mobile food market. So today, FoodShare operates more than 10 mobile markets and delivers thousands of pounds of fresh grown healthy food to communities experiencing food insecurity. This social enterprise helped to sustain their other programming and continue to be resilient and diversity in their funding resource. So purchase an asset. YWCA Toronto raised $1 million and used it to build an affordable housing complex. And they used this facility to work with low-income women, women with mental health issues, and women-led Indigenous families. And what YWCA does is that they made the difference between what residents can pay to make sure it's affordable to them and what the market rate for rent would have been with government rent supplements. So they're using the rent from the residents and money from the rent supplement to pay down the community bond over the next 10 years. What is a community bond? It's essentially the loans from a lot of stakeholders in a community that has a vested interest to support a community. So it's going out to communities, individuals who believe in your work, both emotional belief and also now literal financial support. And not necessarily asking them for a donation for individuals or those in the community, but asking them to invest a small amount into your project. It could be, say, give us 1,000 or 5,000 to invest in this project, and over the next 5 years, or whatever the term may be, we'll go ahead and repay that with a little bit of interest. And it could be a lower interest rate of, say, 2%, 3%, 4%. Some will offer tiered options as well. Like, for example, they might offer a community bond A, B, C, or D, and they'll each have different amounts and terms that you can choose from. Our community bonds are not new, but YWCA is a good example of an organization that may not have the ability to build this affordable housing facility using the regular operating budget. But by raising social finance, you can raise your payable investment to construct this building, achieve this impact, eventually repay the investment over a period of time. I'll be quick with this one. This is Common Good Linens. It started in the basement of a local homeless shelter in Alberta. They raised expansion capital about 2 years later, they purchased a commercial laundry plant. They were able to take on new clients, increase their employment hours for staff. Then they used the laundry service revenues to repay their investors. So this is an example of how they scaled a social enterprise. As for what projects we have funded at the Canadian Women's Foundation, there are multiple ways that the social enterprises are generating revenue, reducing rental costs and investing that money back into their programming. Here's just some examples. It's not an exhaustive list or the only things that we fund with the IRP. Depending where you're on the investment readiness scale, some orgs are developing or strengthening their social enterprises, like through revenue models, or some social purpose organizations are looking to real estate to reduce costs by purchasing asset or renting out a space, so they can reinvest that money back into programming, or build their investment readiness by doing feasibility studies on the property they own, rent, lease, and how to better reduce costs. Those are just some examples there. So here are some of ways that they're generating revenue: fee for service sliding scale. Some will do justice, equity, diversion, leadership training, which is JEDI training, accessibility, Indigenous land exchanges, train the trainer type courses. Some examples of the organizations we funded: Sensory Solutions, Dawn, Skills for Change, The Seed, Fora, Dragonfly Moons, Victoria Native Friendship Center. We also do employment-focused commercial enterprises, STEM, Gradation, Redwood, HVAC Staffing, Kaleidoscope Energy are 2 examples that we funded. For a full list of the projects and what they do, I strongly recommend you follow the link or look at our website, and there's a full explanation of what the projects that we funded at the Canadian Women's Foundation, the IRP program. Continuing that, turning waste to profits, buy one, get one model. There's thrift stores, food and produce, arts and media. So some examples are WINS, Planted, Unime Co-op, social purpose real estate, housing, shelters, co-working spaces. Some of our examples: Senior Women Living Center, Bava, Shelter Movers, Tuigan Housing for Original Use. Again, if you want to learn more details about them, the full listing is available on our website. I'll give you a quick example for one of them. So we funded previously Women Need Society, which is based in Calgary. WINS runs thrift stores, program community resource hubs to support women and their families on their journey towards self-sufficiency. Through this store, they generate revenue and they funnel back into their services and programming. With IRP funds, they honed in on their existing social enterprise and expanded its current model into to include an e-commerce platform that includes subscription-based box service containing curated, stylish thrift clothing items to customer donors. They use funding to fine-tune their business model and push their marketing and promotion efforts. Today, the online service helped to sustain operating income and ensure women living on low income have access to free clothing, household items, and furnishings. Now, so I'll get into the actual application process. If you have any questions regarding what kind of projects we fund, or if you're not sure what kind of project your project might fit into it, I do recommend that you reach out to us. We also have a Q&A session next week if you have more detailed questions you would like to ask. Now, in terms of the eligibility, I'm going to list out some of the most common questions that we get. There's also a full, more in-depth guidelines, criteria, facts, and glossary that we strongly recommend you review on our website. So first question, who can apply? Charities, nonprofits, social enterprises, co-ops, and for-profits with a social purpose can apply. However, if you do not have a charitable number or are recognized as a qualified donee by the Canadian Revenue Agency, you must partner with the charity in order to apply and provide details about this partnership. In this case, the non-charity organization that is partnering with the charity organization is known as the delivery organization. Please note, we do not fund individuals or sole proprietorships at all, even if you do apply with a charity. If you have any further questions about eligibility, please do reach out to us. Second, the work you do and your organization, the work you do must be based in Canada. Sometimes we get questions like, well, we're a charity based in Canada, but we do international work. We can't actually fund that. We are only legally allowed to fund projects within Canada by Canadian-based organizations, and we can't make any exceptions to that. Lastly, it should go without saying, but you'd be surprised, but the projects must focus on women, girls, trans, two-spirit, and/or non-binary people. Intersectionality is a very important factor, which I will get into in the next slide. So our approach to funding. Our approach to funding with the IRP is similar across all grant streams at the Foundation. We want to ensure that our vision of gender justice for all in our grant making is expressed in our prioritization of women, girls, trans, two-spirit, and non-binary people, including First Nation, Métis and Inuit people, Black and racialized people, those living in rural or northern communities, those who identify as 2S LGBTQI, plus living on low incomes, refugee, immigrant, or non-status people, and those living with disabilities. Particularly because in most instances, these are people who experience the most serious levels of discrimination, often have the least access to funding and support. So we want to make sure that the programs are not only for them, but that the leaders of the program also reflect the people who they're directly working for. And that the people who are in need of the services aren't just consulted, but are involved in how these services are designed and delivered. So there's the complete circle of influence and support around individuals and communities that have particular needs. So that represents who they are and where they're coming from. And it's not a top-down approach, but a very much a grassroots approach. So we want to make sure that this is all very clear, that the Foundation's approach is also applies to the investment readiness program as well. We follow the same approach to funding. Here are some things that we do not fund. There's, again, it's a full listing in the documents, but there's the things we do not fund and things we do fund, but these are things we absolutely do not fund. Individuals, including sole proprietorships, federal, provincial, or municipal government agencies and school boards, they can be involved in some capacity with the grant, like as a side partner, but they cannot be part of they cannot be a main delivery or the charitable org. They have to be act in some partnership capacity. Profit-based organizations, if applying as a sole applicant. So profit-based organizations as a social purpose organization can apply as long as there's a charity partnered with them. We do not fund fundraising events, conferences, projects outside of Canada, projects not solely or primarily focused on women, girls, trans, two-spirit, and non-binary peoples. We do not fund deficits or emergency funding, nor films or videos unless it's part of a larger project. We also don't fund capital expenditures or self-defense training if that's the only component of the project. I see there's some questions in the chat box. We will get to them either at the end, or my colleague Aaliyah will be able to answer them as best she can until we get to the end. So please note that you must select the correct portal depending on the stream you're applying to. There's 3 streams this time around. After you have registered, depending on which stream you choose, and after you've registered, please note that there's actually a separate link at the bottom of that page. That's what you use to return to your portal. If you keep clicking on the the specific stream links, it'll keep creating a new application every time. So once you've chosen it, please bookmark the bottom link there. And that's the one that's going to take you back to your portal so you can access your existing application. If you're having troubles with any of the portals or anything related to the tech side of it, please reach out to me. Again, you can also transfer your application. So if you're doing an application with a partner or several people, you can either share the password with each other, or there's a button that will allow you to transfer the application to a different user. Okay, as mentioned, there are 3 streams. Catalyst, Impact, and Systems. I'll go into a bit more detail of each one, but I highly, again, recommend you review the individual stream application documents and the guidelines and criteria to see which one you're best fit in. There's a lot more detail in all of those documents. And if you're still not sure about which one you might fit into, or you have some questions around it, there's the Q&A next week, and you can email or call us with any questions. Okay, so the first one's Catalyst stream. There's a funding pot of between 5,000 to 15,000. This stream is for organizations or projects where you may have an idea or testing an idea and need to complete some discovery work to validate the enterprise by putting together a business plan or develop the revenue generation business model, conduct market research, or complete a feasibility study or prototype, product, service, etc. On a very specific aspect of your project. It already can assist you in launching or growing your social in preparing to take on an investment, essentially. So this is more of you're in the ideation or concept stage, and you're just trying to test things out and see whether there's anything to go on it. Next one, Impact. This is between 45,000 to 75,000. This stream is for organizations or projects that are already generating revenue from the sale of goods or services, and your organization is ready to take on a big project to increase your organization's impact and get one step closer to your social finance goals. So, for example, WINS was one of them. Common Good Linens was one of them that wanted to scale up their impact. They were generating some revenue, but they wanted to expand. Systems change. This is between 35,000 and 60,000. This stream is for projects that will help address a root cause by shifting or transforming structures, mindsets, power dynamics, or rules with the intent of achieving lasting change to enhance the ecosystem of social enterprise development, social entrepreneurship, social finance, community financing, gender lens investing, other related sectors that address systemic issues impacting social purpose organizations led by and or serving women, gender diverse people. So please note, this one does not need to generate revenue, unlike the other 2 streams. I'm going to go into an application overview right now. So this is a kind of gives you an idea of what the application will look like in the different sections. So it starts with an eligibility quiz. There's about 3 questions, and you must answer them correctly in order to access the application. It's kind of like a screening process. There was simple questions, though. For example, it's like, are you a registered charity or delivery organization partnering with a registered charity? If you are neither of those things, you are not eligible for funding. The major application sections are the charity organization, delivery organization, project information, proposal questions, investment readiness. Although please note that section, the investment readiness tab is not in the systems change, as it does not apply to them. And lastly, the budget and supporting documents. So first tab, the charity organization. The questions in this tab refer to the registered charity, which is legally and fiscally responsible for the funding. If you're partnering with a registered charity or a qualified donee, you must fill out tab 2 as delivery organization. You will find the following in this section: so the organization name, mailing address, email, mission, mandate, website, organization contact info, CEO or ED, organizational governance structure information, so information about staff, board structure, Organizations, communities impacted. So which areas are you impacting? Rural, northern, urban, and specifically geography. So which provinces, which underserved community is the organization led by? There's a drop-down list provided for you. We also ask for the charitable number and your qualified donee status. UN Sustainable Development Goals, there's a list provided for that as well. You just tick them off. We also ask you to state the primary purpose of your organization. There's also a drop-down list provided. And then we ask if you have any previous foundation and or IRP funding received in the past. As mentioned, this is for the delivery organization only. This is only if you are partnering with a charitable organization and you don't have a charity number. If you are a charity applying on your own, you can skip this tab. It's not applicable to you. You will find much of the same questions and prompts in this tab as in the previous one, with the exception of the CRA section. So I won't go into it again. It's going to be the same questions aside from that. Okay. Tab 3 is project information. This section is for data collection purposes. These questions are related to your proposed project, social enterprise, or business initiative. You will find the following in this section. So the name of the project, brief summary of the project, start end date, total budget for the initiative project, and the total amount requested from us, the Canadian Women's Foundation. And please be mindful of the stream funding limits for the one you're applying for. It also asks for primary contact info, project impact, so the geographic impact, number of individuals directly impacted. It doesn't have to be an exact number, just a general estimate is fine. And then we ask whether the project is led by the community it serves. Okay, tab 4, which is the proposal questions. These are stream specific and vary depending on which ones you are applying to. So please review the documents for the stream you're applying to for guidance on filling out the application. We provide in-depth guidelines, additional help text, support prompts for each question to help guide you in answering effective responses. Each question has a maximum word count that will be enforced by the application platform. We encourage you to work on a separate Word doc before copying and pasting your answers in, especially if you're working with multiple people on the application. The total word count for the questions are provided in the stream-specific application documents on our website. So if you want to review everything that's on the portal is directly in those Word PDF documents that are on our website. If you're applying to the systems change stream, please note that there's an additional accessibility section at the end of it that must be filled out. Tab 5, investment readiness. So this section is just for data collection statistical purposes only. Your answers here do not have any merit on the review and selection process. It's merely a tool to help us understand where our applicants are on the investment readiness scale. And if you receive funding, how we can help build capacity by providing those opportunities to you. So note though, this is only for the Catalyst impact stream. This is, again, it's not available in the systems change stream. Further note, there's the accessibility section is in this tab, whereas for the system change one, it is in tab 4. You'll notice it when you'll go into the documents and the portal. So there are 5 general stages to think about, as I mentioned earlier, when you're trying to self-assess your investment readiness. So there's the ideation stage, the idea. This is mostly thinking and brainstorming of multiple scenarios. So this would mainly apply to the catalyst stage. There's the concept stage, which is articulating concrete plans that are continuously being further developed and refined, which is mainly, again, the catalyst stage. And then launch, formalizing, implementing the project to bring the concept to fruition. Impact and growth, growing operations, scaling the impact, again, impact, and established a mature operation with deep, broad impact, again, applicable to the impact stream. So depending on where you are with your project, these are the streams that would most likely apply. If you still have further questions on it and you're not sure, again, we encourage you to reach out to us at any time. Lastly, the tab 6, budget and supporting documents. There is a project budget template that is provided for you. Please download and use the template for your budget. It's an Excel document. You must use the template provided, otherwise we will have to send the application back as incomplete. If you're having any tech issues with it, please reach out. For the supporting documents, there are 3 required documents for Catalyst and Impact and 4 required documents for systems change stream. The other documents listed here are recommended but optional. Please note, if you did receive previous IRP funding, we strongly recommend sharing any documents or achievements about the projects. You can attach them, anything you have, because you can only add 1 attachment. If there's multiple attachments, combine them into a single PDF and just upload them. This chart lists out who is responsible for which documents, especially if there's a partnership involved. For example, the delivery organization must fill out the project budget and project work plan schedule of activities, while the charity organization must provide their organizational budget overview and audited financial statements. And that applies if you're 2 organizations partnering, versus if you're just a charity on your own applying, all the requireds are just from that same organization. So just another note on the budget template. It also has another tab that lists all the proposed eligible and ineligible expenses on there. So some of the eligible expenses include professional services, such as legal services or accounting services, minor capital purchases for product service development or renovating a space, training and skills development costs, marketing outreach and promotion costs, community engagement, network development or related activities like workshops, webinar costs, technical consulting services to complete a feasibility study, market assessment, business plan, etc. For more information and a full list of these things, please review our website and the funding guideline criteria doc, which lists all of them. Again, if you have any additional questions, please reach out. So here's some tips for your application. Read the funding guideline and criteria, application instructions, facts, and glossary. Many of the questions that people already have tend to already be answered in there. Please take some time, review the documents, and then reach out to us. Whether you want to have a call or an email, either one is fine with us. We can even book one-on-one time with you if needed. Provide a realistic proposed budget. This is one, especially when it comes to the advisory committee, it's very mindful of having, very mindful of the budgets and ensuring that everything looks very realistic and where you're going to spend your money. So please be very sure of your numbers as much as possible. Share the business model, explain how the operation project is generating revenue or plans to. This is mainly for Impact Catalyst. Clearly explain how the venture project aligns with the goals of the IRP. Provide details on your partnerships and any buy-in you have or need to foster. Clearly demonstrate your commitment to gender analysis and GBA+ and how you plan to integrate as a core of your social venture. Connect with the IRP team if possible. Consider if communities served are involved in the design and decision-making process. So some next steps. So our application opened on November 30th. It will be closing on January 18th, 2023, 12 a.m. PST. So 11:59 PST, I should say. Once you submit your application, you'll receive an email to confirm that we've received your submission. There will also be a link to a survey. The survey is optional, but please fill it out if you can. It helps us better serve you, and it improves the application process each time. Completed applications will be reviewed by an advisory committee with expertise in women serving and women-led community advocacy and development, social enterprise innovation, and social finance, gender equality, and community engagement. And just to note that all applicants, whether successful or not, will be notified of our funding decisions in May of 2023. And that's when projects can also begin and when expenses can be incurred. Lastly, there is, as mentioned, there's a Q&A, a much larger Q&A that will be happening next week. Our director will also be joining us on the call. If you have especially more detailed questions that are very specific to your organization, please sign up. The links are going to be on this presentation. They're also on the docs on our website, and my colleague Aaliyah has provided them in the chat as well. Please also review the website. There's a number of additional resources on there, including more information about the IRP, previous funding projects, successful funding projects. And we also encourage you to sign up for the Canadian Women's Foundation newsletter, along with our grants and funding newsletter. We'll notify you of any future rounds of funding. With that note, I'd like to thank you for all attending this presentation and taking the time to join us for this webinar. We'll try and answer as many questions as we can for the next couple of minutes. And but please note, since we do have a high volume of calls that we are receiving now that the grant round is open, we will try our best to get back to you within about 3 to 7 days. But we will try our best. We're trying different things to be as available to you as possible, including the Q&A sessions and voicemails and emails as much as we can. Okay, Aaliyah, shall we turn to the Q&A?
Sounds good. Are you able to see them, Phaedra?
I'll go backwards. Oh, wait, I think you already answered that. Am I looking at the Q&A? Yes. Sorry. Okay. Okay, so someone's asking if the organization partners with a charity, who's considered an org that delivers the project and receives the funds? So it's the charity organization that will receive the funds. The non-charity organization is the delivery org. So generally what there'll be is there's usually an MOU between the two organizations about transferring the funds. Some of the charitable organizations might ask for an admin fee between 8 to 15%, depending on what it is, what the agreement is. Some will ask for none, some will ask for X percentage of the funding that you might get. Regarding the Catalyst stream, do we find a service to help us, or does CWF help us find a service? It depends. We might have some resources. There's also a link to Innoweave. Maybe Aaliyah can put the link in there. Innoweave has a number of expert service providers that you can reach out to if you're not sure which ones to access, and that could be one of them. Is funding provided up front or after receipts are submitted? Funding is provided up front. You will immediately get your funding once contracts have been signed, and you will get the full amount. It's a lump sum payment. Does the organization have to solely or primarily serve women and gender diverse people, or can they be gender inclusive with certain programs that focus on gender specific services? Generally, we do have that. It has to primarily serve women, gender diverse people. It has to be the absolute main, it's one of our main criteria, and it's something that the advisory committee certainly looks at with a very close eye. Are there any in the chat that I missed?
No, I don't think so. And for those who have written questions in the chat, if you feel that they haven't been adequately answered, please put them in the Q&A box.
Gretchen, it's a very good question. I'm going to get back to you, but I also recommend that if there's anything that's very specific to your organization that you would like to sit down and talk about, join us for the next Q&A or just contact one of us directly. I can answer we have this time allotted for very generic questions about the application process. But for yours in particular, I would say just from the information I saw, it is applicable. But we would have to talk about it in more depth. Someone anonymously asked, they are a registered charity building a community center for minority groups of immigrants in New Brunswick. Is there a way your organization can help with funding? Not enough detail there. If you want to expand on that, please do. Can we include our theory of change outcomes within our work plan document? Yes, please do. Or you can even add it as an attachment if you'd like. Is there ongoing reporting required through the delivery of the program, or is there an end date for the use of funds? Yes, good question. There's going to be an interim report and a final report. So the interim report is quite simple. It will be generally just a few questions, maybe about 5 questions, not data heavy. The final report will be a little bit more data heavy and will ask a little bit more of you, but you will get templates on those if awarded funding ahead of time. The end date for the use of funds for this cohort that would go through would be March 2024. Everything has to be spent by March 2024. If a partnership and expense are due before May, can the organization pay and then get reimbursed upon receiving grant money? No, because our funding, basically projects have to be approved by the board, and any spending has to be after the board approves it. It cannot be before. Can you apply for 2 different programs? No, you have to only apply to one. You can only apply to one. Systems change examples. So there's one called the Exchange, I believe. That's an example of, let me just see if I can get the name for them. They are, I believe, a Toronto-based one. The Exchange, and they tend to focus on environmental and cultural change, especially when it comes to Black and Indigenous people. So it's just a minor example, but as far as we will definitely get more examples for you of what might be suitable in our Q&A. And I'll post some more examples for you next week as well. For the one that's asking about the building, I would suggest you email me so we can talk more details, because I'm going to need a few more details on that as well. Because it sounds like if you're buying the building and you're asking for funds to buy the building, we don't provide enough funds for that. I think that's okay. I think that's all of them. Aaliyah, did I miss anything?
I don't think so. I'm just getting to a couple more in the chat, but if there's any more folks, please use this last bit of time to put your questions in the Q&A.
Okay, we'll leave a few more minutes. Okay. So it says our organization has implemented women-specific programs funded by the Canadian Women's Foundation, but we're not an exclusive women-focused org, rather gender inclusive with focus on Black and marginalized women. Do we qualify for funding? It depends what the project is for, because this is not for programmatic funding. This is generally for the revenue diversification piece so that you're able to invest back. It depends on what the project is. I, again, recommend that you reach out to us with more details and we will be able to guide you better. What is the best stream to apply to if you've already started your business but have no business plan or business analysis or market research? In that case, the best one would be the Catalyst stream because you're still in the ideation concept stage. Are there any tips you might have for for-profit orgs applying in partnership with a charity org? First, must be the for-profit org must be a social enterprise, must have a social purpose. We recommend that you have a relationship with this charity. Sometimes it can take time to build a relationship, but if you need any assistance in terms of finding a charity, there's a number of resources that will list charities, especially in your jurisdiction there or your province, depending on where you are. And you can reach out to these charities, talk to you about your project with them and see if they're interested in partnering with you. And again, you don't have to necessarily, the charity org doesn't necessarily have to be anything more than the holder of the funds. So they are just fiscally responsible and in a legal sense, but they don't have to be necessarily directly involved in your project, depending on the memorandum of understanding you have between the two between yourself and the charity organization. Does investment readiness imply that our scaling up efforts are ultimately aimed at being ready to attract or desirous of seeking investment from other resources? Essentially, yes, but everyone's going to be on it at a different point in that investment readiness scale. So the end goal, yes, is to do that eventually, but that doesn't mean that you have to be or you will be ready after you get this funding necessarily. It just depends on where you are on the scale. For a thrift store whose profits go to women's shelter, would we be able to apply for funds to modernize our point of sale, which will allow us to reach customers and provide more information to our community regarding services provided by our women's shelter? I assume this is I can only assume this is a for-profit business with a social purpose. You must partner with a charity first and foremost. And yes, so yes, you can apply through this. It would be a scaling up, but make sure that you are partnering with a charity and that the funds are going back to that programming. We have been a charity holder for another organization. Are we eligible to apply? As a charity holder, is this organization receiving current funding from the IRP? Because if you are not eligible to apply if you're already receiving funding from another project. A few more details on that, if you don't mind. Hi, we're a for-profit and generating revenue. We're helping an NGO outside of Canada. Do we qualify for any of the programs? No, only if the programming and is within Canada. It cannot be an organization outside of Canada. I represent a nonprofit co-op and we are a social purpose organization, but not a charity. I understand that we nevertheless should seek a charity partner org. Yes, that is correct. You can apply, but you must partner with a charity. They have to have a registered charity number or designated as a qualified donee by a Canada Revenue Agency. Okay, I think that's all of them in the Q&A box now. Any other ones in the chat?
Nope, looks good.
Okay. I'll give one more minute if anyone wants any final questions. In the meantime, Aaliyah, can you also repost the Q&A for them if they want to register? Thank you all for joining. I'll leave it open for a little bit more for a couple of final questions. Otherwise, please sign up for the Q&A. And again, please reach out to us if you have very specific questions to your organization. It might require a little bit more detail than could be provided in these chat boxes. Can we fund an educational program for women via this funding? We don't generally fund, it's not really programmatic stuff that we fund. So there has to be, especially if you're doing Catalyst and Impact, there has to be a source of revenue. Sorry. Okay, I think that's the last one. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day. And please join us again next week. And again, please reach out to us at any time. We do our best to answer as many calls as we can within a timely manner. Ali, any last words? Or final words, I should say, no last words, sorry.
No, thanks to everybody who joined, and we'll see you next week. And if there's any hesitation, just visit our website.
Thank you all.